We were talking about this story actually in our meeting today. There are two parts to it. And the first is a story that I saw just a few days ago. You kind of look at it and you go, wait a sec, this doesn't make any sense. So we wanted to talk to Dr. Chris Labos about this because it's serious. It turns out young people in their 20s or 30s with cancers now so advanced that surgeries could not save them, those stories are becoming more and more commonplace. And this is happening here. This is in Canada. Part of a pattern that's become what they call a medical mystery and driving a rather stark increase in cancers of various organs in people under the age of 50. So, Dr. Labos, let me start with this fact. It's not an isolated case here and there. And the worst part, of course, is we don't know what's driving this, do we?
Well, here's the thing. There's sort of two different stories that are going on here. So one of it is the current situation that we have in the healthcare system where everything is being backed up. It's very hard to meet our targets. There are delays in surgeries. Everything that was sort of pretty bad always that got a little bit worse during the pandemic, and we still haven't caught up on all of that. So there's that system-wide thing. The science behind this is there was a paper in the British Medical Journal Oncology that was published just before Christmas in December. And that sort of set off a number of headlines because it was a global study using the Global Health Data Exchange to track cancer rates. And when they looked at the cancer rates in people under the age of 50, so young people, what they found was that they have been going up globally. But an important caveat to that point is that the increase was predominantly seen in the developing world, not in countries like Canada, the U.S., or Western Europe. So you have to be a little bit careful to not overstate the case here because a lot of the research that people link back to as they've been writing editorials and news headlines is going back to this original BMJ oncology study. But that is more of a global problem rather than a specific Canadian problem. So we sort of had the confluence of two different things.
Do we tend to be dismissive of cancer in younger people somehow?
Certainly so. Certainly so. And again, we tend not to think that, how could a young person get cancer? But of course you can. And there are obviously certain genetic factors that predispose you. And of course, if you have individual risk factors, so if you're a smoker, then you're obviously going to be more at risk to get cancer than somebody your same age who doesn't. So there's certainly an issue here. And what's making it harder is that, whereas it used to be fairly straightforward to get basic diagnostic testing done, if now it takes weeks to months to get anything done, that's obviously going to delay things and make it much harder to treat something if it presents at a much later stage or if something has already spread.
Okay, I want to point out when I said in Canada, and you're right, you're talking about this on a global scale. That's what this study refers. It is happening, however, here as well. Maybe not to that degree, but enough of a degree that it's a concern?
It's enough of a degree that it's a concern because, again, we're certainly, the people who work in the field are certainly seeing more advanced cases. But it's unclear, at least to me it's unclear, whether this is just a system problem or whether we're seeing a change in biology. When you look at the problem globally, especially when you look at the increase of cancers that you're seeing in the developing world, you could probably attribute some of this to, to some degree better diagnosis. But another problem that's really an issue globally is the increase in smoking. We tend not to think about smoking here in North America all that much because we have largely succeeded in curtailing smoking because of the anti-smoking measures we put in place. But in many parts of the developing world, smoking is becoming increasingly common and much more of a public health problem. So it's an interesting thing we have to deal with because we sort of worry about Canada, we worry about where we live, but then we also have this parallel global health problem, and sometimes the two are, not to say unrelated, but sort of sometimes issues that don't seem to resonate here are actually huge problems globally if we're not paying attention.
Okay, let's move on to what you wrote about in the Montreal Gazette today, which is truly astonishing that the HPV vaccine could ostensibly be eradicating cervical cancer. I have skin in this game. My daughter got the vaccine. I had issues with cervical cancer. This is a total and complete game changer. Tell us more, Dr. Labos.
Well, and it's essentially that. Prior to the introduction of the pap smear, when you go back to the early 1940s, 1950s, even the 1960s, cervical cancer was one of the major cancer killers in women. And we tend not to, think about it that much anymore because the pap smear was so instrumental in driving down cancer-related mortality. But we forget that in many parts of the developing world, where resources are limited, where pap smears are not widely available, a lot of women still do die of cervical cancer every year. And so part of why this story is so important is not only is it, important to realize that because of the advent of the HPV vaccine, we are seeing virtually zero cervical cancer in young women who are vaccinated at a young age. But it's also going to potentially allow us to expand this program globally and deal with what is a major public health issue in the developing world, which is cervical cancer, because it is difficult to have continuous pap smears. You need a fairly good medical infrastructure in place. Whereas if you can just vaccinate young women at a young age and give them their 3 doses, and some debate about whether you could even give them less than that and still be fine, well, then you've gone a long way to reaching what the WHO has set as a target, which is the effective eradication of cervical cancer to rates below 4 cases per 100,000.
Is there a fear? I mean, this is, I hate to even kind of ask this question, but if we know that there's a vaccine, will women perhaps not or get the pap smears that they would maybe need? Do you know what I'm saying? I worry that it'll swing too far that way almost.
So that's always the concern that has been had, like, will we let our guard down? But I think the point of this is, number one, first of all, we are seeing the technology here change. So we may eventually get to the point where we transition away from pap smears and much more towards at-home testing for cervical cancer. There are new genetic tests that you can essentially do at home, a self-swab effectively, that would test for the specific strains of HPV that cause cancer.
That's what they're doing in BC, right? Sorry to interrupt, but it's been in the news.
Exactly. That's what they're doing in BC. So it's very possible in the next few years we're going to see that roll out on a much more broader scale. So that would also make things a lot easier. But I think the important point of the HPV vaccine, if you can get a zero cancer incidence, it may not even be necessary to do regular pap smears.
Wow.
That's where the thinking is going. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, I did you ever think that we would make these kinds of leaps and bounds so quickly?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that's really amazing because the HPV is a relatively recent vaccine. It was first tested in the early 2000s, I think became widespread by like 2007, 2008 in most countries. I mean, this has been a relatively recent and a very instrumental change. I mean, when people write the history of cervical cancer, the 2 big milestone moments will be the invention of the pap smear and then the invention of the HPV vaccine.
All right. Well, while we've got you, Dr. Labos, let's talk about a book signing that you have coming up. It's on the 17th of February.
Yes, Saturday, February the 17th, 1 p.m. at the Indigo in Point Claire, so in Fairview. Going to be signing the book, and there may be a familiar name from CJD there as well. Ken's going to stop by and help me take some questions from the audience and do a little live reading as well.
Oh, terrific.
Very cool.
So the book, by the way, we've talked about this when it first came out, is called Does Coffee Cause Cancer? Although that's just the subtitle, I guess, if you will, because it goes on from there.
It's a great read.
Yeah.
Yes, if you want to find out if coffee causes cancer, you have to read the book.
There you go.
Doesn't, you can read cancer.
That's how we sell books.
And you get a love story. That's
you get a love story.
Yes, it's fantastic. And you're still doing Weekends with Ken Sundays at 8:10?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you so
again,
much.
if you do want to get out there and get a copy of the book and a little chance for a Q&A, again, February 17th, you said?
That's right.
Okay. We'll talk. We'll
Indigo
certainly remind
Point
you
Claire,
before that.
Yeah.
Dr. Labos, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take good care.
You
Chris
too.
Labos, and yes, he's on every week.
I said Point Claire. Point Claire.
What's wrong with that?
No one ever says that.
What do you, instead of just Point
Point
Claire?
Claire.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard anybody say Point Claire?
No, now that I think about it, probably not.
I was laughing at myself.
Okay.